My presentation is on commerce and culture from 600 CE to 1450 CE. The five main trade routes from this time period were the Mediterranean, the Silk Roads, Trans-Saharan trade, the Indian Ocean networks, and trade in the Americas. Each had a great influence on the surrounding nations, as goods and cultures were exchanged on a massive scale. Cultural diffusion and the economic benefits of this extensive trade ultimately shaped the world into what it is today. The Mediterranean trade routes connected the Byzantine Empire, northern Africa, England, and many other nations. These nations traded bulk goods like grains as well as luxury goods like silk, and by interacting with each other, they spread their cultures. One example of this is how the Byzantine Empire shared old Roman culture with traders from Florence and Venice. The wealth accumulated by these Italian cities and the reintroduction of the classical Roman ideas ultimately led to the Renaissance. Also, Byzantium traded extensively with the Middle East and China, obtaining exotic goods like spices, fabrics, and silk, which they then traded to European countries for bulk goods. Mediterranean trade also changed the world by causing the Black Death to spread to almost every port in Europe. From 1346 to 1350, about 40% of Europe's population died. Ultimately, however, the decrease in population meant that there were less workers, so they would be paid more. These increased wages for workers led to the end of feudalism, and the overall standard of living had increased. The effect of Mediterranean trade stretched across the world and far past 1450. Silk roads were land trade routes that flourished when empires like the Byzantine, the Muslim Abbasid dynasty, and the Tang dynasty were in power, and then again later on when the Mongolian Empire took over. Though technology and agricultural products were widely traded, these routes were mostly used for luxury goods. China had a monopoly on the luxurious silk industry since the production process was kept secret. The material became a status symbol for the rich and even became sacred in Buddhism and Christianity. The Silk Roads had a limited economic impact. Their cultural impacts were far greater. Many people from Central and East China converted to Buddhism voluntarily and built many monasteries. And just like these people picked up on Buddhist culture, Buddhism picked up elements of these people's cultures. Another important piece of the Silk Road's history is the spread of disease. Under Mongol rule, the bubonic plague spread like wildfire. The plague devastated Europe, but fortunately in China and the Islamic world, the death toll was a fraction of what it was in Europe. The far-reaching effects of the culture, goods, and diseases exchanged on these routes solidified the Silk Roads as some of the most influential trade routes in history. The Indian Ocean networks stretched from southern China to the east coast of Africa, and also included India, Arabia, and the Southeast Asian islands. The predictable monsoon patterns made this trade possible, allowing for the exchange of Southeast Asian spices, Chinese porcelain, cotton from Arabia, and ivory and gold from East Africa. Bulk goods were also traded, including textiles, sugar, rice, and wheat. One cultural impact was when Islam was introduced and spread throughout the area. Islam was a portable religion and was friendly to trade, leading to it being adopted by many cultures, including the Swahili. Politics were also affected by this trade, as in both Southeast Asia and Eastern Africa, rulers used the wealth acquired from trade to become more centrally governed. And in Srivijaya, this trade led to the formation of their state, since their gold and spices were highly sought after. The Sailendra kingdom in Java underwent a similar transformation and allied with the Srivijaya, and both cultures were heavily influenced by Hinduism and Buddhism. Overall, the commerce and culture changes that resulted from the Indian Ocean trade routes shaped each unique civilization around them. Trans-Saharan trade routes connected North Africa, West Africa, and the Mediterranean world, and enriched the culture and economy of West African civilization. This area's geographic diversity is one of the reasons it was so successful. Copper and salt deposits were common in the desert. The Sahel allowed for the production of millet and sorghum. The forests for the south provided yams and kola nuts, and forests in the west had gold. Another reason for the success of these routes was the camel, which could go 10 days without water. Between 500 and 1600 CE, there were many empires centered around this trade, including Mali, Ghana, Songhai, and the Hausa city-states. Among these civilizations were many trading centers like Timbuktu and Jen, where traders from all over exchanged goods and ideas. Another important piece of this trade was the spread of Islam to West Africa. Civilizations like the Mali had a culture largely based on this religion, and it led to their civilization being known as peaceful and orderly. The successive trans-Saharan routes would lead to the development of West African civilizations and their achievements and change the world around them. The American trade routes of this period stretched from the Cahokia just south of the Great Lakes to the Incan Empire in the Andes Mountains. Contact between these civilizations was very limited due to the lack of horses, donkeys, and wheeled vehicles, as well as the mountains and rainforests that had to be crossed. But still, trade occurred between the Mayan cities in the Yucatan and the city-state Teotihuacan in central Mexico. These merchants primarily exchanged luxury goods like jewels, quality cloth, and rare bird feathers. The Caribbean islands also had trade networks, using canoes to trade among themselves. Lastly, the southwestern United States commonly exchanged goods with Mesoamericans, as Mayan products like liquid chocolate and cacao beans were found in that area. The trade in the region was far more limited than in other areas, but this trade still influenced the economy and culture around them. Overall, the five main trade routes of this period greatly influenced the culture and economy of the world. By allowing people to interact with one another and exchange goods and ideas, the trade that occurred from 600 to 1450 changed people's lives, even today in modern society. Thank you.